dive. Today, our mission is to really get into one of those moments that, well, changed everything in colonial history.
Hmm.
The 1857 revolt, often called, and I think rightly so, India's first War of Independence.
Absolutely. This is the moment the ground literally shook under the English East India Company. If you want to find the roots of organized resistance against the empire, well, 1857 is where you have to start.
Yeah.
And we're not just listing battles here, we're looking for the aha moments, what really caused this massive eruption and why, even though it failed militarily, did it become so foundational?
Okay, so let's set that scene first. Because by 1857, the anger wasn't just one thing, was it? It was everywhere, touching, every part of life. The sources we looked at paint this picture of just grinding despair.
It was systemic, definitely. The whole socioeconomic setup was, frankly, a disaster zone engineered by colonial policy. You had farmers, the backbone of society, just crushed by land taxes. We're talking rates like, 80% of their crop? It was pure extraction, unsustainable.
And alongside that, these land grabs. The doctrine of lapse.
Right.
Confiscating territory if a ruler didn't have a male heir the British approved of.
Exactly. And that wasn't just political chess. It led directly to people starving in huge numbers across different regions.
Okay.
And don't forget the local industries. Weavers, artisans, traders deliberately undermined to push British goods. So skilled people suddenly had no way to make a living. It wasn't just ruling, it felt like economic warfare against entire communities.
So you've got this immense economic suffering, but that alone doesn't always spark a unified revolt, does it? Something else must have been going on.
Right. It needed something deeper, more personal, a kind of spiritual injury, you could say. The English had been chipping away at religious customs and traditions, sometimes subtly, sometimes not so subtly. This created this feeling of humiliation, like nothing was sacred, so they were adding this insult, this attack on faith, on top of the economic pain. It suggested total domination.
And that simmering pot of resentment just needed one final thing to make it boil over. And it came from a piece of military equipment, of all things, the new Enfield rifle cartridges.
This is the catalyst, the specific, tangible thing that fused Hindu and Muslim anger together. Because to load this new rifle, soldiers had to bite the end off the cartridge.
Right.
And the rumor, which, the sources confirm was basically true, was that the grease used on these cartridges, it was made from cow fat, sacred to Hindus, and pig fat, unclean to Muslims.
Oh, wow. So a direct affront.
A direct, calculated assault, that's how it was seen, forcing soldiers to violate their core beliefs just to do their job, an attack on their very identity, their self-respect.
And that brings us to Mangal Pandey, March 29th, 1857, Barrackpore Cantonment.
The flashpoint. Pandey didn't just refuse the cartridge, he openly defied his officers, took up his weapon, and shouted that famous cry, "Kill the foreigner!"
He was arrested, executed quickly. But his act, it wasn't just forgotten.
No, not at all. It instantly became something much bigger. He became a martyr, a symbol. His personal defiance became the spark for a much wider fire. His name was on everyone's lips.
And that spark properly ignited just a few weeks later, right? May 10th in Meerut.
Yes, Meerut is where the mutiny officially breaks out. Soldiers there didn't just refuse orders. They stormed the jail, freed their comrades who'd been imprisoned for refusing the cartridges, killed British officers, and then they made a decision.
To march on Delhi.
To march on Delhi, the historical heart of power in India.
And this wasn't some carefully planned military campaign at first, was it? More like a spontaneous eruption of anger.
Exactly. It was desperate, fueled by rage. But what's amazing is what happened next. As these soldiers marched, people from villages, from towns along the way, they just started joining in.
So it snowballed.
It snowballed massively, showing just how deep that desire was across society to, get rid of the British.
And when they reached Delhi, what was the first move?
A profoundly symbolic one. They went to the Red Fort and declared the Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar, who was, 82 years old then?
82.
They declared him the ruler of India, the leader of the revolt.
Okay, hold on. An 82-year-old emperor who's basically living on a British pension with no real power, why him? Wouldn't that seem like a weak choice from a military perspective? Why not a younger general?
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of the strategy. Maybe unintentional at first, but powerful. Militarily, yes, perhaps a liability. Zafar wasn't a commander. But psychologically, it was brilliant for unity.
Oh, so.
Because Zafar, however powerless, represented the pre-British order. He was the descendant of Mughal emperors, a symbol recognized across India by Hindus and Muslims alike. Declaring him leader instantly framed a revolt not just as a mutiny, but as a fight to restore an Indian ruler.
Ah, okay, so it gave it legitimacy,
Yeah.
a national banner.
Precisely. It turned disparate anger into a national struggle, at least in name. It provided that crucial umbrella under which different groups, soldiers, princes, farmers could unite, even if just symbolically.
That makes sense. And clearly, that unifying message worked because the revolt didn't stay contained. It spread like wildfire, didn't it? Across north and central India especially.
It really did, and the sheer diversity of people involved is astonishing. We're talking farmers, landlords, laborers, soldiers, religious figures, even women playing major roles. The revolt found leaders in every corner.
So let's talk about some of those key figures, the ones who really carried the fight regionally. In Kanpur, you had Nana Sahib Peshwa.
Yes, Nana Sahib, who had his own grievances with the British over his inheritance, but the real military brain there, the sources suggest, was his commander, Tatya Tope.
Right, Tatya Tope. What made him stand out?
He was a master of guerrilla warfare. While the British relied on their organized army and set battles, Tope was elusive, constantly harassing them, using speed and surprise. He kept the British off balance long after they thought they had things under control. Really brilliant tactics.
And then the women leaders. In Lucknow, Begum Hazrat Mahal.
A formidable figure. Her husband, the Nawab, had been deposed. She essentially took charge in the name of her young son, ruling Lucknow, leading troops, and fiercely resisting the British siege. She famously declared the land belonged to them, not the foreigners.
Incredible determination. And then, of course, maybe the most iconic figure of all, Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi.
Ah, the Rani of Jhansi. Her story is just legendary, refusing to give up her kingdom after the British tried to annex it using the doctrine of lapse because she had an adopted son.
And the image of her fighting.
Unforgettable. Leading her troops, sword in hand, apparently sometimes with her young son tied to her back, battling British cannons. The sources call her a Singni, a lioness. She became this enduring symbol of fierce, brave resistance against overwhelming odds.
It's amazing. And it wasn't just the famous names. We see this deep commitment everywhere. Like Kunwar Singh in Bihar, an 80-year-old man.
80 years old. An old landlord leading the fight in Bihar. There's that story, possibly apocryphal but telling, about him cutting off his own severely wounded hand to prevent infection or capture, just so he could keep fighting.
Wow. Just incredible resolve. And in Bareilly, Bahadur Khan took charge. Leadership really did spring up everywhere.
It did. But despite all this heroism, this widespread passion, the British eventually did crush the revolt. So we have to ask why. If the desire was so strong, why did it ultimately fail militarily? Was it just about better guns?
Well, that's part of it, obviously. The British had superior weaponry, a professionally trained, disciplined army, and, crucially, a unified command structure. But it goes deeper than just guns, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Strategy and communication were key. The revolt, for all its passion, remained largely uncoordinated. Different leaders fought bravely in their own regions, but there wasn't a central command directing the overall effort.
Right. They were fighting separate battles almost.
Exactly. And the British had the telegraph, a game changer. They could instantly share intelligence, coordinate troop movements, and concentrate their forces wherever the threat was greatest. The rebels were always reacting, often too late.
And not all of India rose up, did it? That's important too.
Very important. Large parts of the country, especially the Punjab region and South India, remained either neutral or actively loyal to the British. The British were able to draw on loyal Indian troops, Sikhs, Gurkhas, Madras regiments to fight against the rebels. So in some ways, it was also an internal conflict.
So once the British regrouped and brought their full force to bear, the end was probably inevitable. They retook Delhi first, right? Crushing that symbolic center.
Yes, Delhi fell after a brutal siege, and the aftermath for the leaders was tragic. Bahadur Shah Zafar was captured, tried, and exiled to Rangoon in Burma. His sons were executed. It was the final humiliating end of the Mughal dynasty.
And the Rani of Jhansi.
She died fighting near Gwalior. Became an even greater legend in death. Nana Sahib disappeared, possibly escaped to Nepal. Tatya Tope continued his brilliant guerrilla campaign for almost another year, but he was eventually betrayed, captured, and executed. The rebellion was systematically extinguished.
So, a military failure.
Yeah.
A clear defeat on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
But if we step back, look at the bigger picture. Why does this failure matter so much? What's the real legacy here that makes it so foundational for India?
That's the critical question, isn't it? What did it achieve despite not winning? Well, first, it scared the British establishment profoundly. It led directly to the end of the East India Company's rule. Power was transferred directly to the British Crown and Parliament in 1858. They realized they couldn't govern India the same way anymore.
Okay, so it forced a change in British policy.
A massive change. But more importantly for Indians themselves, 1857 was proof. Proof that unity across regions, religions, social classes could challenge the most powerful empire on earth. It showed that resistance on a national scale was possible.
It wasn't just a few local riots anymore. It was the first time, really, that you saw this widespread shared sense of wanting freedom articulated through action. It planted that seed, didn't it? The dream of independence.
Exactly right. It planted that seed deep in the collective consciousness. The memory of 1857, the stories of its heroes, Mangal Pandey, Rani Lakshmibai, Tatya Tope, Kanwar Singh, they became the inspiration for future generations.
You can draw a line from 1857 to the later freedom fighters, can't you? Gandhi, Nehru, Bhagat Singh, Subhas Chandra Bose. They all look back to this moment.
They absolutely did. They inherited that legacy, that fire lit in 1857. It showed what Indians could do when they stood together.
So 1857 really was India's first powerful call for freedom, a call that echoed down the decades.
And maybe that brings us to a final thought for you, the listener. Great movements, fundamental changes, they often aren't born from easy victories. Sometimes they're forged in the fire of a powerful, unifying failure. Think about it. How often does real change start not with winning, but with an event so profound, so seismic like 1857, that it shatters old assumptions, demonstrates collective will, and fundamentally changes what people believe is possible? That failure wasn't the end. Maybe it was the necessary, painful first step towards eventual freedom.